I'm Mary Kay, and I'm an alcoholic. And yeah, I'm nervous, but that's okay. Let's see. My sobriety date is August 21st, 2004, and I'm a member of the Keeping It Sober group over in Aberdeen. On the way over here, I said to my husband, you know, you talk. You like to talk. Why don't you just get up? You know my story better than anyone. Why don't you get up there? I don't articulate very well. And he said, oh, just pretend you're really angry with me and you'll do just fine. So, you know, so that broke the ice. I've said some prayers, and whatever comes out is God's message coming through my words. And let's see. Where do I start? I was born a million years ago on the south side of Chicago, and my dad was an electrician and worked in the steel mills and blah, blah. I was 4 years old when we moved to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and that's where I grew up. It was, you know, sometimes I look back on growing up and I think it was nothing but idyllic, it was magical, it was all those things. And then sometimes I look back and remember the rage that my mother had and the fights and those kinds of things. So it was kind of a combination of both, really. We lived out in the country on a hill overlooking a lake, and I love water, and I've always loved water, and that's probably why. My dad drank heavily, for a long time. After I'd been introduced to AA, I would look back and say he was an alcoholic. I don't know if he was or wasn't, but the fights that he and my mom had were fights that I think often happen in alcoholic homes, where she locks him out and things were broken, and the screaming. I remember the screaming. I loved my dad more than anything in the entire world. He was very soft-spoken and quiet, and the only thing alcohol, I believe, did for him was allowed his personality to come out and be a little more social, if you will. My mom, on the other hand, was not an alcoholic. She drank socially, I suppose, but was a screaming, raging, frightening woman, and I both hated her and feared her. So my dad was my ally. I have a half-sister who's 10 years older than I am. We have different fathers. And so the dynamics of the home were kind of like that, really. I would often wish and hope that she would just go away. And I didn't know what death really meant, but I just wanted her out of the picture. And I went to Catholic school. I was trying to think of things to share, about how I felt as a little girl growing up. And a lot of it was, I've heard this said, and it's so true for me. I felt different. I didn't feel a part of. I remember riding that school bus into town with the public school kids, and I had to walk from the public school to the Catholic school, and just feeling different. And looking out the window in the bus, wondering, what's it going to be like when I get out of this, whatever this is. And dreaming. I would daydream a lot. The kids, I remember one kid on the bus and waiting for it, and he said, and I remember this, it just was this feeling of, I'm different. Catholic school kids have to sit in the back, get to the back of the bus, kind of thing. And so those little kind of things, I've just not forgotten. I don't remember a whole bunch about anything as far as me drinking. I'm sure I sipped, tastes of my mom and dad's drinks, but I don't really remember too much beyond that. When I was in 8th grade, I was just finishing up my eighth grade, and my father got really sick, and they took him down to Chicago to go to the hospital, and he had surgery, and he had something called radiation. And this was 1966, and I was naive. I had no idea what radiation meant, or that it meant that he was probably pretty sick. And he had cancer, and he died in September of 66. So I was just starting my freshman year of high school. I'm sorry, nervous here. Anyway, it was absolutely traumatic. I never shed a tear at the time. Once I found alcohol, I shed a lot of tears. I was now left with the mother that I feared, and the person who was my safeguard was gone. There was no preparation. No one said, by the way, your dad's dying, anything like that. So that was a big thing for me. I got through high school. My mom remarried. My dad was her second husband, so now she's on husband number 3. And it was a blessing because he took the pressure off of me as far as my mother was concerned. I continued to fear her. I know today she did the very, very best she could do. But the thing she couldn't do, because it wasn't given to her, was she didn't nurture me. She wasn't able to give me what I think moms often give their daughters, and that's that helping them grow up and go from being a little girl to a young lady, and all the things that go with that. That didn't happen in my house. I'd never dated in high school. Never dated in high school, period. However, let me take a sip here. Her husband was a pretty good drinker, heavy drinker, and so our fruit cellar, we called it, was filled with booze, beer, whiskey, brandy, whatever they all drank. And I was hooked in with a group of kids that were in the band and whatever. It was November 23rd, 1968, and I had taken a bottle of brandy from the cellar, and I was supposed to hook up with my friend whose name is also Mary Kay. There were 2 of us in this small high school, and my stepfather was dropping me off at her house, so I had the bottle of brandy. We had some beer that I had stolen, put down in the lake. The kids came out and picked up the beer. So this is what we had. We snuck into the football stadium, and football season was long over. And the last thing I remember about that night was kind of being in a circle and glugging the booze, and the next thing I knew, I was in the hospital. And I was looking up at nurses and doctor, and they were saying, "What is your name? What is your name?" And I couldn't get the words out. So that was my first blackout. Needless to say, I was in a lot of trouble in 1968, at that time anyway. They wanted the buyer. That's who they were really after, was the buyer of the alcohol that provided it to the kids. And there was no buyer. I was the buyer. I provided. So I was in a heap of trouble. Continued to be under my mother's tight rein. Finally, got through high school. I was a really good student, pretty good student. I loved math, and I escaped home and went to a university, an engineering school yet further up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan called Michigan Tech. And in 1970, the ratio of guys to girls was 10-1. And so I figured, that I had a chance of, dating or whatever. So, and I did, and I had, I had some fun. I drank at the parties and, did what we did. I met a young man that in the end of my freshman year, and we started dating, and he was a year older than me, and from the Detroit area, and we ended up getting married in September of '73. He had graduated, I had not, and it was really, what was really, really good about it is, again, my mother was off my back. I had met this nice young man from the right family, blah, 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 all that stuff that was so important to her. And so I did that. So Kevin and I were married. He was, he was with the Ford Motor Company. His whole family was Ford Motor Company. They lived and breathed it, and he was a good person. He really was a good person. We should have been brother and sister instead of husband and wife. I wasn't in love with him, but I stayed with him for 7 years. And during that time, it was, of course, the early mid-'70s. We drank and partied with kids our age and made music tapes, and we drank a lot. We just drank a lot. I don't remember a problem with alcohol, although I know we had some pretty good fights, and I think I recognized that when I drank, I was more belligerent, more angry. Fast forward some more, by the mid-'70s, I was working for a time-sharing company in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And so by now it's 77, 78, 79, and there was a lot of partying, Friday night, happy hours, and that sort of thing. Still no problems, as far as legal or anything like that, but I wanted out of the marriage, and I tried desperately several times to leave. I would put deposits on apartments, and I just couldn't follow through with it. In the meantime, I fell madly in love with the man that I'm married to right now, but he was from San Francisco, and he worked for the company, would come into town and kind of wooed me. and I was ready for an escape and fell madly in love. What can I say? And when I filed for divorce, and when my divorce was final in October of '81, he said, move to San Francisco, and I said, okay, let's go. So I did, and it was an instant love affair. I loved it. I didn't like it. I loved it. I loved everything about it. And it was a lot of fun. I met his friends. I need to say this, he does not drink. He doesn't drink at all. He never drank, never liked the taste of it, and really hated how it made him feel. Go figure, but that's how it was. I got introduced to wines, and I, from the get-go, I was a rum drinker. I mean, I never ever changed for 30-some years or 40. I don't know how long I drank, a long time. And we had some problems. I remember some ugly fights. I think my rage was getting more and more evident the more I drank. The insecurities, the accusations, those were all coming out when I drank pretty badly. I'm going to try and fast forward here to October of 1985. We mostly lived around the Bay Area. We had a couple of quick 1- and 2-year jaunts to the East Coast. He's retired now, but he was in the software world. And so we had some geographical changes, but always came back to the Bay Area. And in '85, we were living in San Jose, and that summer, I was working at Almaden Vineyards, which the vineyards were about 10 minutes from the house. And I came home at lunchtime, and it was a specific time that I've identified because things changed. And what changed about it was that I started sneaking. And now remember, I'm the only one in the house except by now his 13-year-old son is also living with us. But as far as adults, I'm the only one drinking. And the half-gallon of Bacardi that was always on the counter now would go down or get emptied, and there would be other bottles hidden throughout the house. And that Bacardi became water because he never touched it, and how would he know? My birthday's in September, and I ruined that. I ruined a lot of occasions, but I definitely ruined 1985. I threw beautifully wrapped presents. I broke things. It was ugly, ugly. And the next month, October of '85, I went into treatment for the first time in San Jose, inpatient, 28 days. And I came out, and I thought, I'd been the perfect student, and I came out with, if you can come out of treatment with flying colors, I don't know, but I thought I had. And I drank the entire next year. I hit it, and I drank, and I hit it, and I drank. I don't remember a whole lot. It's so long ago. But what I do remember is about a year went by, and I thought, this is crazy. I'll get involved in the aftercare program. So I did that. And I hooked in, and I was doing reasonably well, going to meetings. Never worked steps through this whole time, and there were 19 years from the time I went into treatment the first time until August of '04. Anyway, I got involved. And then we were moving up to the Northeast Bay, about an hour away, and everyone said, raise your hand, say you're a newcomer, get some phone numbers from women, do all the things we tell each other to do. I didn't do it, and I started drinking. And that pattern really followed me for the next 18, 19 years. We moved quite a bit, mostly around the Bay Area. We did move to Washington, D.C. in '90 for 2 years. Came back again to the Bay Area. I'm forgetting some stuff in here. A lot of geographics in geographical moves. I mean, throughout this whole thing, I really believe I knew that I was an alcoholic. I was in and out of meetings. I would say to my husband, I'm going to a meeting, I've got a sponsor. And then a little while later, he'd ask me, well, how's that going? Are you going to meet your sponsor? No, she doesn't go anymore. Or that they've canceled that meeting. I would just lie, like we do. And, AA doesn't cancel meetings. It's a rare occasion when we cancel a meeting. It just continued. I didn't have a DUI. I was pretty controlled about my drinking as far as I would make sure I had the booze in the house. so I didn't have to get in the car and drive. My husband traveled a great deal, so it was like I had the perfect situation of total freedom, and by then I wasn't working as well, so I had a lot of freedom, no supervision, and plenty of opportunity to drink. Back then, we'd get, the detailed phone bills, and you could look at our phone bill and see the nights that I was really in the bottle because the long-distance phone calls were just crazy. I would get obnoxious, argumentative, antagonistic. I would attack my mother long distance. That person that I feared growing up, I became her when I drank. Never wanted to be like her, ever, ever, and I became her as my alcoholism became, worse. More active, I guess is probably what I should say. Let's see, what else happened in there? In '96, we moved to Cary from Northern California, and I kicked and screamed. I did not want to come to North Carolina. I thought, this godforsaken place. And it was just more excuses to drink, and not realizing that I drank because I was an alcoholic, but I used every excuse I could. All through those years, I would try outpatient treatment centers. I would say, this is it, this time is it, I really mean it. By the late 90s, my husband he emotionally left me at one point. He didn't physically leave me, but he emotionally left me, and I knew that we were in deep trouble. He had taken a job up in D.C., got an apartment, and would just come back to Cary on weekends, and it was rough. I promised, I cannot tell you the number of times I would look in his eyes, and he would hold me and say, just promise me you won't drink today, promise me you won't drink today, so we can go to dinner and a movie like we planned. And I'd look him in the eye and say, I absolutely promise you. And I meant it, but I couldn't do it. I could not do it. I know now today that obsession had a hold of me like nothing has ever held on to me. Every waking hour was filled with remorse, waking up first thing in the morning, fear, hopelessness, and then wondering, where are more bottles hidden? If I don't have any more in the house, how can I get out? Where am I going to go to get it? And then more importantly, how am I going to sneak it back in? And what is the outcome going to be this time? What are the consequences going to be? And I never knew. I backtrack just slightly because I think it's important to, remember, share. I ruined a lot of occasions. I absolutely ruined a lot of occasions, and one that will always, that hurts that I did this, but it's the truth, and that is, was a Christmas in the late or mid '90s, I guess. We were living in the Bay Area, and we had a Christmas party to go to. It was a fancy black tie affair, and I'd been drinking all afternoon in preparation for the event, and it was in the city, and so we drove in, and it was kind of Tom's show to, he was hosting this big old party, and by the time we got to the city, he realized that my behavior was such that I was drunk. I was picking a fight. I don't remember the drive in across the Bay Bridge even, but he called ahead to his secretary and said, get a room, Mary Kay's sick, and they took me right up to the hotel room. I never saw the party, and I don't know what the embarrassment was for him, and I don't, but I know that it had to have been awful, and that's just one of many times that things like that happened. And the problem was that sometimes it didn't happen. Sometimes things could go along just fine, and I could drink and get away with it, or drink the afternoon away and have a good time, and not make a fool of myself or hurt someone. But I never know what was going to happen when I picked up a drink. I didn't know if it was going to be one of those bad times or if it was going to be okay and get away with it. On more than one occasion, I was on antabuse to convince him that, I promise you, I'm not going to drink. I'm taking this antabuse. And, we're so sneaky, we know every trick. I would get a bottle of Bare aspirin, scrape the B off, fill my antabuse bottle with the Bare aspirin, and then I would take the pill in front of him to prove to him I was taking my antabuse. Meanwhile, my face is beet red. Why is that? So I did lots of those sneaky things that I've heard, heard that we do along the way. Back to the late 90s, we were living in Cary, and we had some very special neighbors. They're still very good friends today. They're in their 80s now, and I loved them, and they loved us. And she was just brokenhearted seeing me disintegrate, and she said, "You got to go to treatment. You got to go to treatment." And she was instrumental in me going back into treatment. So I did another 28-day stint, and that was in April of '99. Came out, stayed sober, dry for a while, and then went right back at it again. In 2001, Tom had retired for the first time, and he said, let's go back to California, but let's go to San Diego, because the weather's perfect for golf. And I said, okay. And we did. We were there 18 months, and I hated every single minute of it. And now I think, how could you hate San Diego? I would have hated anywhere we lived, because I hated Mary Kay. I hated me so much. I could not stop drinking. I couldn't not buy a bottle. I couldn't get the thought out of my head of having to have it. How can I get it? How can I get it in the house? What am I going to sneak it in? Should I put it in the dirty clothes? It was just this constant thing in my head of how can I get it? When am I going to get it? This is kind of a story that hurts, but I'm going to share it. That very first Christmas, we didn't know anybody, and we weren't with family. So it was that Christmas of 2001, and I tell this story because it's just so it's the message is strong to me in our little family life. We went to see a movie, and it was the Muhammad Ali movie. And it had just opened Christmas Day. We went to see it, and we came home, and we're sitting on the couch, and Tom said, I've lost you. You're having an affair, and I can't compete, and that affair is with a bottle. And he cried, and I still couldn't stop. I mean, there was just nothing that could get me. I couldn't stop. This is how strong it had a hold of me. Continued on until we moved here in January of '03. I'd actually fallen in love with North Carolina, and for a lot of reasons, economic and whatever, it made sense to get the heck out of Southern California. And so we moved back here in January of '03, and I quickly, wherever I went to AA. I really did go to AA meetings. I mean, when we lived in San Diego, I was at a 7:30 a.m. meeting every single day. But as you know, going to a meeting, rubbing elbows with all of you that are sober and working this program doesn't do it. I've got to do the work myself, and I found that out. Met some really neat people in AA, and I wanted to be a part of, but I wasn't a part of because by 4 o'clock in the afternoon I was at one of the 5 or 6 ABC stores in Moore County getting my rum. I just floundered in and out, again, wanting to be a part of, but not a part of. I asked someone to be my sponsor sort of in the spring of '04, and she is still my sponsor today. So she saw me through lots of white chips that spring and summer. And about a month before my sobriety date, my husband and I were talking, and he said, do you need to go to treatment? Should you go to treatment again? And I had heard about this place called Fellowship. So I made some calls, and I went up there to see the place and talk to somebody. And it's probably an incredible place. But I came home and I looked at him and I said, look, here's the deal. We can send me to treatment for 28 days and we'll spend X amount of money and we'll have bought me 28 days of not drinking. And I'll come back here, and if I'm not ready to do the work and do what AA tells me to do, I'm going to be right back at the liquor store that afternoon. And I knew that in my gut. So a few more weeks went by, and that particular weekend in August, he had a golf tournament up in the Raleigh area, and he left on that Friday afternoon, and I did what I always did, and that was I went and bought a half gallon of Bacardi rum. And I drank probably 2/3 of it, high tolerance, glugged it down. I don't remember anything about the night. There wasn't anything catastrophic that happened. I don't think I had any ugly phone calls with my mom. I could have, but I don't know. Like I say, I didn't lose the stuff, but I lost Mary Kay. I lost me so much on the inside. I mean, I was a shell. Anyway, the next morning I woke up and feeling lousy, feeling hopeless, feeling like I'd never felt before in my life, and I did what I've heard many of you do, and that is I hit my knees. And I prayed like I'd never prayed before, and I knew I meant it in my heart. I knew that I was ready. I asked for God's help. I don't know how this works. I wish I knew how those moments turned into what it turned into. I called my sponsor and got together with her that Saturday, went to the women's meeting, went to the meeting that night. Tom came home from the weekend, and I don't remember if we discussed it or not, to tell you the truth. All I know is from that moment forward, I felt a peace come over me. I knew that I didn't have to drink anymore. I knew that there was a way out. I can't say that the obsession was gone like that, but I promise you within the first week or two it was. I mean, it just did not have a hold on me anymore, and I don't know why, I don't know how, I don't know the moment, but I can tell you it was gone because the fight was gone. And so I followed my sponsor around. She was retired. She went to noon meetings. I went to noon meetings. I got involved in the Keeping It Sober group. It was a brand new group at the time, and I joined, and I quickly became active. So I was going to noon meetings, night meetings. She encouraged me. In other words, you will go to intergroup with me, and just everything she asked me to do, to the best of my ability, I did. I was ready, and there was no turning back. We started working the steps, and from that, trying to think of more things. I've been told you go right to 9 o'clock, and this is my disclaimer. The few times I've told my story, I finished up at 8:45, so I'm dragging this out. But she was just absolutely fabulous, and I can't say enough of how grateful I am towards her, because she gave me her time, and that is a precious, precious gift that she can't get back. But we would meet before noontime meetings. We'd put on the coffee. We read. We talked. I talked to her. Picked up the phone every day. I tried to do everything that Jenny asked me to do. We. In the Aberdeen building, another woman, three of us got together once a week. It was about a year went by, so maybe I was a year sober. And three of us met on Wednesday nights and got in the big book and word by word read, talked, shared. And that took about a year. And then in the meantime, there was a Sunday night big book study that started, or workshop, whatever it's called, after the 7:30 meeting, and I got involved in that. And then another group of people started one on Thursday night. So I was, in those early years, really involved, and that's when, reading the book with someone else makes it come alive and makes it so real for me, and I love that. And I've got a new sponsee now, so it's wonderful because she's helping me far more than I'm helping her. The home group is fantastic. There have been times over the years I've thought, this is crazy, I can't stand all this drama. And then, but 90% of the time it's incredible, and we've grown, and I've grown, and our home group has helped me stay accountable. I mean, I absolutely love our home group, and I know that this is an incredible home group too. I hear so many wonderful things about primary purpose. So I think for me, it's really important to have a home group and stay active in my home group. I've had I've sponsored different girls over the years. It's always been an incredible experience for me. I don't know where some of them are. I know that I stayed sober, and that was really important. That's really, really important. I mean, there is nothing that is more important to me than my relationship with God and my recovery, my family, and all of you. It's just how it goes. Although I grew up in a religion, I didn't tap into that religion, and today I'm not I'm not religious, and that's okay, but I pray every morning, and I pray every night, and I pray throughout the day, and I thank God throughout the day for the blessings that I've been given, and they're little things that, they're not little things, but I mean, they aren't monetary things. I mean, I love to walk, I love to power walk, and I have the most incredible dog in the world, and every morning, or as often as I can, I'm outside with him, and I say, thank you for strong legs, thank you for my eyesight so that I can see all this beauty, and I try to stay in gratitude as much as I can. And that's not to say there aren't problems, there aren't challenges. There are plenty of challenges, and the recipient of my frustration is, 9 times out of 10, it's my husband. He's why he puts up with me, I don't know, but I do know why. He loves me, and I love him. But it's this program has given new meaning to our relationship. It's given new meaning to the relationship I have with his children and our grandchildren. I never wanted children of my own. I'm really not crazy about babies, but these grandchildren are gifts, and I have a favorite, and that's the way that is too. But what else do I want to say to you? Linda mentioned this the other morning when we chatted, just to confirm, of course, that I was going to be here. And she said, I always love hearing what people have walked through in recovery. And, I haven't had a lot of hardships, so that would be a big old lie. But I did lose my mom, and that mom that I feared and hated as a young person, even into my 20s and 30s, became someone that I loved, and I forgave from the standpoint of, I know she loved me. She loved me with her whole heart and soul. And in the end, those last few years, we talked every single day. She was 86. She died in December of '06. And my sponsor walked me through that. I mean, we had to fly to Florida, and we put her in hospice. I got some help with that, and how do you do that? You think that you're going to lose a spouse or a parent or a child, and how could you possibly stay sober through that? And I see too many of you all do that with the same kind of tragedies and losses. We've had some health scares, I guess would be the way to say it, with my husband, and everything's great, but those things kind of take your breath away, and you think, uh-oh. And then I realize, and he does too, although he's not in our program, that God has my back. God will take care of us, and there isn't anything that we can't walk through as long as God's, I'm holding on to his hand. And I believe that. I really, really do believe that. In the last couple of years, I started looking for a job, and I hadn't worked in 21, going on 22 years, and it took a long time. I was a secretary back in the 70s and 80s, and it was really humbling to get back out there and try and find a job. And I thought in my mind, well, if I could even get a job and just make a little bit of money to add to the family unit, as well as maybe have health benefits, that would be huge. And so anyway, it didn't work out. I looked for a long time. I'd send my resume. I'd do a nice cover letter, and nothing. And then last October, a friend of mine called me and said that her admin assistant had walked out without notice, and could I come in and because she knew I was looking for a job, come in and help on a contract basis. And I thought, well, okay, but I was really only looking for part-time, and now you're saying full-time, but okay. And it has been the most humbling experience you can imagine. There have been some tears. There have been a lot of frustration. My freedom was taken away from me as I knew it for all those years. That spoiled brat had to become responsible and be a part of contributing to the family, and it feels good to be able to do that. That doesn't mean I like it. It just means that I do it. It just means that, and I know every one of you know exactly what I'm talking about. So it's it is what it is, and we take it a day at a time, and I stay grateful because it is a good job. It's a good paying job. Medical benefits, there are great pluses to it. I'm just, I'd rather be home with the dog and Tom and baking and, being at home, and that's just not where it is today. So, I love my life. I absolutely love Alcoholics Anonymous. I love that I have a relationship with my higher power. I'm so grateful for that. And all the rest doesn't matter because I so believe that anything that comes down our way, it'll be okay. See, here it is, 7:45, and I'm going to... It's the witching hour. I guess I could talk about some other gifts, and that would be I had the pleasure of going to an international convention in 2010. I know some of you were there. And so to have, I have a really good girlfriend, 2 or 3 of them, but one in particular, and we've traveled together. We've gone on, I think, 3 or 4 trips together, and we have had a ball. And then a small group of us, joined a bigger group of you guys, but down in San Antonio, and that was huge. The whole family unit has just changed dramatically in the last 8.5 years. The communication that we have at home, and the communication that I think I have with the friends that I have is just so much better. I goof up right and left. I have a hot temper. My mouth will go before I think sometimes. I've made plenty of amends. And thank God that we have the steps that allow us to do that. I can make a mistake, I can own it, and then move on. It's just great. It's absolutely great. I'm going to end it because I really don't have anything more to say. I thank you, Linda, thank you all for being here and welcoming me so nicely. I appreciate it.